Good morning and welcome. Good morning. Welcome to all who've joined us here in person or on our live broadcast on the World Wide Web. We're glad you're here today at All Souls. And are there any members who have brought someone to All Souls that they would like to introduce this morning? Please.
Hi, I'm Carol Cole. I'm a member, and this is my daughter-in-law, Michelle Greenfield, who's driving from Colorado to Ohio. This is an effort.
Well, welcome. Anybody else? Are there any visitors who would like to stand and introduce themselves? Please.
Mimi.
Hi, Mimi.
We're introducing ourselves.
Excellent.
I just sell this church all the time. I'm a, 2 boys membership, and I usually sitting alone. So I said, I usually visit her, and I come up and I sit next to her and introduce her to everybody. And I hope you take a look at her. I'll try to have her come to lunch with us, and then have you come to lunch. And I'll sit right there.
Speaking of lunch, today is a Sunday Plus lunch down the hall in Conover. And Leanne Burgeon and her line dancing crew have been kind enough to make a tasty lunch for all of us. Those of you who are visitors or dropping by to check us out, please let us know at the front, and we would love to have you as our guests. Join us for lunch free of charge. Just stop at the membership welcome booth at the front. And lunch will be served in Conover Auditorium down the hall following service. Today, we've got some very wonderful friends back in our good graces. Today joining us are Reverend Kathy Riegelman and her husband Larry Beekman is the guest musician today. And please give them a warm welcome. Thank you.
Good morning. It's good to be here with you this morning. What does it mean to bless? To bless does not mean saying magical words, changing the mind of God, or altering the course of the cosmos. To bless does mean reminding each other of our gifts, remembering the wisdom that is within us, and recalling our common purpose. The work we do and the connections we make are how we bless each other and the world. May the words we say and the actions we choose lead us to greater compassion, and may this compassion lead to blessings, both given and received. Welcome to this time of worship.
Good morning. My name is Parker, and I light this chalice for a free and responsible search of truth and meaning.
Now please rise as you are able and join us in our words of covenant. Together we affirm goodwill is the spirit of this church and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
soul, my soul. What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss, and takes away the pain of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's ground, friends to be gathered round, oh my soul, oh my soul. Friends to be gathered round, oh my soul. To love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends, oh pain and sorrow and with thanks unto the end I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end I will sing. I invite all you preschoolers through fifth graders to come join me. Our middle school and high school students are doing a UU scavenger hunt on the plaza this morning and then having treats at Winstead's afterwards. I'd like to see all of our preschool and elementary children down here, please. Over there. Hi, sweetie. All right. Do you have anyone else? Is everyone here? Okay. I'm so happy to see all of you here this morning. We have some wonderful, fun programs for you this next school year. And today is our Sunday to celebrate our new school year here at All Souls. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of your programs, and then we're going to have a fun time. You preschoolers and kindergartners are going to learn all about the wonder of your bodies and how you can say and think and do. And guess what? One Sunday you'll even get to take off your shoes and socks and wiggle your toes in the air. And you're also going to learn all about the beauty of nature. So in your class, you're going to get to sing and dance and paint and enjoy the outdoors. And here at All Souls, we think it's important for us to learn about the different world faiths and to respect those faiths. So you first through third graders are going to learn about all the world religions, holy days and holidays in fun experiential ways. And one belief that most world religions have is do unto others as they would do unto you. And that means to treat others the way you want to be treated. And you know what? All of you already do that in our Sunday school classes. And I'm so proud of each and every one of you. And I see a couple of fourth and fifth graders. You fourth and fifth graders are going to be learning about the stories of the New Testament and the teachings of Jesus. And we want you to learn these stories and teachings because you're going to hear about them a lot in our culture and in our society. And since we are UUs, you get to decide what you believe about those Bible stories. But you'll hear references to them in books you read, in plays you go to, and people you talk to. And all of you will be making new covenants with each other in your new Sunday school classes. And you will be talking about how to create a caring community with each other. So you'll share how to treat each other with kindness and respect and caring and appreciation for our differences. So your teachers and I are really excited about being with you this new school year. And as a celebration today, we have our favorite storyteller, Brother John, here to tell stories with us. How many of you love his stories? I know I do. And Brother John is going to lead us to our classes by singing a song called Alrambe. And Alrambe is a Swahili word that means let's pull together, let's all work together in unity with each other. And that's what we do in our Sunday school classes, isn't it? So now Brother John is going to lead us to our classes with the song, and all of you are welcome to join in the refrain of Alrambe.
You can start with the footwork. The first thing we're going to do the force, lead everyone out, and go to one in this. Let's pull together there. And this is the drum I have is the djembe, or the happy drum or talking drum. Here we go.
Hi, is Eva here this morning? I think she might be running a little late. She spoke very eloquently last week about the Rosebrooks Center for Domestic Violence and Intervention. And there she is. Eva, you're working all the angles. We love that. That's okay. It was. Please come on up. Yes, ma'am. Please. You spoke so eloquently last week and moved many people.
Well, thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
And this is Eva Vlach from Rosebrook Center for Domestic Violence and Intervention.
Yes. I am the Health Services Coordinator at Rosebrook Center. So a lot of us think that we know a lot about domestic violence, but believe me, we don't. I'm still learning after years of doing domestic violence work. I'm learning new things. But let's start at very basics. Domestic violence, it's about one person having power and control over another person, an intimate partner or family member, and the methods they use to gain and maintain that control. Nobody gets punched in the face on the first date and says, wow, that was so great, I think I'd like that again. No. Usually those first dates are like anybody falling in love. They're wondrous. The heart pitter-patters, all of those feelings happen. It's after a person is involved, is committed, is hooked into the relationship that the abuse begins. And it can be so insidious. It is so minute sometimes that it doesn't even seem like power and control is happening. Many mechanisms for power and control. Isolation, controlling finances, emotional and psychological abuse, physical abuse. We kind of have that stereotype of a person with a black eye, and believe me, I have seen some doozies. But a person can be controlled without being physically abused. One of the most powerful mechanisms is to control through children. Those of you who are parents know how you will do anything for your children, and so when they are used as a tool against a parent, it is very powerful and very effective. And and this is my focus for today, of control is reproductive coercion. We see that in forms of soliciting pregnancy, like, oh, I love you so much, I want you to have my child. That's nicer than tampering with birth control, and that's nicer than rape. But a woman who is pregnant, who has many children, especially, like when I see a mom and she's got a 5-year-old, 4-year-old, 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and she's pregnant, I wonder about reproductive coercion. Is she getting to control her own reproductive health? Yeah, so that's very effective. It's also very long-term. Our courts, our family courts, do not look at abuse as a reason to terminate a person's parental rights. And so family court custody suits can be very terrible. They can be devastating for the domestic violence survivor and their children. And we end up with situations where the person who is abusive has quite a bit of alone time with children who are often terrified of that person. So back to reproductive coercion. Women of means through history have always had better access than women who experience poverty. And today, when reproductive rights are kind of on the line anyway, it is harder and harder to find a way to control that. Unfortunately, the people who support termination in case of rape or incest don't provide funding for that and don't provide easy access in those times either. One of my advocates who worked with me for quite a while, she's finished med school and she's doing a residency in OBGYN. She's delivered, at last count, she had delivered 46 babies. She went to UMKC, no, not UMKC, the one in Columbia. Sorry, I'm a KU girl. I get fuzzy about the Mizzou stuff, but anyway, that's where she was. She had to go east or west to do a residency that included family planning. That's not available here, and so someone who doesn't have experience in family planning then can't offer family planning services. And so, we're going down the drain here. I appreciate your support. I so appreciate the funding that you're providing to Rosebrooks. This is going to go towards giving people in great need some help towards gaining control of their reproductive health. I thank you so much. And I don't know, is this the time that we're doing the collection? Okay, so the offering is, how does that go? The offering is given and the offering is received. Thank you so much. I am at a table in the back, and if anybody wants to come talk to me about anything having to do with, yes? No, we are at a confidential location. We're kind of in that neighborhood. We are approximately around 75th and Prospect.
We can't hear the questions or answers.
Sorry, she was asking if we were located over at East 63rd Street, and I said no, that we were at a confidential location, but at 75th and Prospect approximately. And she was saying that there is a place where girls can go for support. Well, I'd love to talk to you afterwards and learn more about that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eva. I think she summed it up perfectly. The offering will be given and greatly received. Thank you. Please join me in the dedication of the offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community and inspire their growth and to change toward a compassionate society.
One weekend day, I went to a Jewish arts festival, and a Star of David pendant kind of caught my eye. And while I'm not usually one to wear jewelry, I bought it. And the next day, as I prepared for work, I realized that the Star of David was kind of very prominent, right above the V of my shirt. Immediately, kind of an uncomfortable feeling came over me. Did I, a Jewish surgeon in a Christian-sponsored hospital, want to be so bold in announcing my faith? Would my Star of David be offensive to my patients? After considering that many people wear religious symbols, I concluded that wearing the Star of David was not unique. It did, however, take some time for my self-consciousness to subside. Several months later, I had a consult with a patient and her daughters to discuss open heart surgery. I learned that an injury to the patient as a child had resulted in many surgeries, and as a result, she was reluctant to have any other surgeries, especially heart surgery. During our discussion, she looked intently at my necklace and she asked, "Is that a Star of David?" I asked if she was Jewish, and she replied that she was a practicing Christian. She then asked me to tell her about my religion. So I proceeded to tell her about Judaism, and she abruptly interrupted me. I don't mean Judaism. I want to know how you practice and observe your faith, and how your faith influences the way you live your life. Well, I then shared how my faith is the foundation upon which I make various choices and decisions during life's journey. After concluding our consult, I left the room to await the patient's decision, and about an hour later, I was informed that the patient had decided to proceed with the surgery, which would be scheduled for the following day. After the surgery was finished, I met with the patient's daughters and talked with them about their mother's surgery, and as expected, they had a plethora of questions, all of which I answered. And as I started to leave, one of the daughters said to me, "I want you to know that my mother decided to have her heart surgery after she saw your Star of David. She also related that the importance of faith in my personal and professional life gave her mom a great sense of comfort and security." After leaving the room, I began chuckling to myself. My Star of David, about which I was so concerned might be offensive to others, turned out to be a gift, a blessing to someone who's not even Jewish.
God is no noun, and certainly not an adjective. God is at least a verb, and even that shrinks her. God is not so much a woman as she resides in the improbable hope of brown mothers. God is not so much a man as he is at work in the memory of my grandfather's laughter. God is not black, neither is he white. God is waiting in the contradiction of songs from slave shacks, and I have seen God in the alabaster smiles of children at play. We're getting Michelangelo all wrong. God is not the bearded one surrounded by angels floating over the Sistine. God is not Adam with his muscle back pressing the earth. No. God is in the closing inch of space between their reaching fingers. To be clear, God is not you. God is somewhere in the 14 billion years that have come to mean you are. He is waiting for us to stop naming her. She is waiting for us to see all of him. God is waiting in the space between fingers that might connect. God is, after all, at least a verb.
Someday you will die, but I'll be close behind. I'll follow you into the dark. No blinding light or tunnels to gates of white, just our hands clasped so tight, waiting for the hint of a spark. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. You and me have seen everything to see, from Bangkok to Calgary, and the soles of your shoes. You're all worn down, the time for sleep is now. It's nothing to cry about, 'cause we'll hold each other soon. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. Love of mine, someday you will die, but I'll be close behind. I'll follow you into the dark. No blinding light or tunnels to gates of white, just our hands clasped so tight, waiting for the hint of a spark. If heaven and hell decide that they both are satisfied, illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. There's no one beside you when your soul embarks, then I'll follow you into the dark. Then I'll follow you into the dark.
I begin my rounds on ICU one morning and see two women walking down the hallway. One of the women is older, the other younger. They are a mother and daughter. The mother leans heavily on the daughter, who supports her mother with her own arms as they walk toward the waiting room. Later that day, I find them in the patient's room. The patient is the husband of the older woman, the father of the younger. They are from Southeast Asia. They are Buddhist. The daughter has been in the United States longer than either of her parents, and she speaks English fairly well. Her mother does not speak English at all. I learned that the patient was brought to the emergency department, and his condition quickly declined. He was taken emergently to surgery and came out of the operating room on life support. The patient is not able to communicate either verbally or non-verbally. Language and culture are making it difficult for this family to understand the many medical details of their loved one's complex condition. Interpreters are used, which helps somewhat. My first few interactions with the mother and daughter are brief and filled with emotion. Along the way, there are many interactions with many doctors, some of the information confusing in and of itself, and some confusing as it might seem to contradict another specialist's opinion. I have to say it's difficult for any family, let alone a family who comes from a different culture and speaks a different language and practices a different faith, to understand their loved one's condition when one is so critically ill. I continue to show up, listening and communicating as best we can. My interaction with the patient's wife is usually through silence and gestures and a hug every now and then. We understand the universal sign for prayer, and the wife is clear that prayers are welcome. I continue to visit this family at their loved one's bedside day after day, and what turns into week after week. I learn the names of the daughter's spouse and child and siblings. The daughter shares bits and pieces of their story of immigration. Although I know they come from a war-torn country, details are not shared. The daughter shows me family pictures from happier times. Often, when the daughter and I are talking, the wife is on the phone talking to family members halfway across the world. Other times, the wife sits silently, looking out the window and weeping. I learned that many of the family members are not biological family. Rather, they are people who have come together due to need on one side and compassion and generosity on the other. At one point, this family brings a white American couple with them to help with the daughter's child. I talk with this couple, making the assumption that they have helped this immigrant family. Maybe they've even sponsored them in the immigration process. I am humbled to learn that the patient and his family took this white American couple in when they were homeless. The daughter's child snuggles up on the woman's lap. It's clear these families have become close. We also grow close, and whether through words, silence, or gestures, we gain a level of trust and connection in the midst of suffering, in the midst of sorrow. The daughter tells me that at a specific time every night, she and her mother go outside of the hospital, light incense that then carries their prayers to God. Unfortunately, as these days and weeks go by, the patient's condition continues to decline and it becomes clear he will not survive. I help arrange for Buddhist monks to come to the hospital and offer the appropriate prayers and rituals at the bedside. The family asks for privacy to clean their loved one's body before the monks arrive. The monks then come and offer the appropriate prayers and ritual for the patient. Not long after this, the patient dies. All tubes and IVs are removed, and the body is prepared to go to the morgue. The daughter asks, what happens next? It becomes clear to me that taking the patient's body to the morgue unaccompanied is not congruent with their faith or culture. She tells me that she needs to stay with her father because his spirit, as it leaves his body, might be frightened or confused or feel lost. We explain that she cannot go to the morgue or stay there, and she nods in understanding. There is a tender moment when she steps to the gurney that holds her father's body, places her hands over him, and explains in a tearful whisper to her father that she cannot go with him. She is telling her father and his spirit. I help the family gather their belongings. We say our goodbyes, and they leave the hospital. I've reflected many times over the years on what I learned about both connection and compassion from my ministry with this Buddhist family. Because we live in a diverse and pluralistic society, it's becoming more and more important to learn how to interact respectfully and appropriately with people who practice different religions and faiths. This is especially important in the healthcare setting, where patients and their loved ones so often experience suffering and feel vulnerable. One way that the hospital where I work has grown in our ability to care for our diverse patient population is to bring leaders and practitioners of various faith and belief systems to the hospital for educational offerings. I recently helped create a panel discussion to educate nurses, and the panel was titled Connecting Compassionately. This panel consisted of a pagan, a Buddhist, a Jew, a humanist, a Muslim, and a Mennonite who helped us learn about the Amish faith. This panel met at KU's School of Nursing to help us learn about how to connect compassionately with those we serve. We all came away with a deeper understanding of the beliefs and values of the practices of these faiths. The nurses in the audience also experienced 6 people of diverse faiths sitting together at the same table, engaging respectfully and compassionately with each other. I want to share some of the insights from this panel discussion that can be applied to connecting compassionately with people of diverse faiths and backgrounds. However, before I share these insights, I want to offer a huge disclaimer. What I'm offering today is not about gaining general knowledge about world religions, so this isn't like a World Religions 101 sermon. Rather, I will first identify a theme from each of the religions represented on the Connecting Compassionately panel. Each theme is based in the values, beliefs, and practices of that particular religion. I will then apply these themes to the story of my ministry with the Buddhist family. So I'm going to identify a theme and then apply it to the story I just shared with you about the Buddhist family. While I know that every pastoral situation in every relationship is unique, I want to use these themes as a framework. My hope is that these themes will serve as specific examples of how we can connect compassionately. So let's begin with Buddhism, because this is the faith of the family that I ministered with. Dr. Anna Legru, who many of you know, was our Buddhist presenter. And Anne shared that one of the foundational values in Buddhism is compassion for all beings. This is the foundation of Buddhism. Buddhism also teaches that all life is characterized by suffering and impermanence, and that humans are capable of attaining peace and liberation through one's own efforts. Meditation is the practice to realize compassion and liberation from suffering. Making time and space for meditation, then, for a Buddhist is very important. Buddhism helps us understand the importance of making time and space for spiritual practice, and then of honoring that space. So, back to the Buddhist family in the hospital. It was clear that prayer was a high spiritual value for them. They used incense to carry their prayers to God, and they were thankfully honoring our hospital policy of no open flame in the hospital. They went outside to offer these prayers. Also, when the time came to have the monks come and offer end-of-life prayer and ritual at the bedside, the staff caring for the patient respectfully honored this space and gave the family the privacy that they needed. It was also clear that the staff was deeply touched by this time of prayer and ritual. We don't have to understand the particularities of someone's prayers to be deeply and spiritually moved. Buddhism reminds us that making and honoring the time and space for spiritual practice is important. So, the theme that I am distilling from Islam is that it reminds us of the importance of how we greet each other. Islam is the second largest faith worldwide, which means there is vast diversity within this faith tradition. Within that diversity, our presenter, Manoj Shabir, said that we can connect through how we greet someone who is Muslim. The Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you, and the response, wa alaikum assalam, and unto you, peace, lets Muslims know they are among friends, not strangers. Using this greeting is a small effort that is greatly appreciated. So no matter what someone's faith or culture, remember it's important how we greet each other. So let's take this insight of greeting each other respectfully and apply it to this Buddhist family. For the Buddhists, greeting with palms together, like a lotus flower in front of our chest, is both a formal way to greet and to say goodbye. However, where the hands are placed signals different levels of respect. One greets friends of the same age by placing the palms together at chest level. Greeting elders and others of higher ranks means moving the hands higher. To greet a monk, The hands are held at eyebrow level. When one prays, they are placed even higher for God. I learned that how I greeted the Buddhist monks who came to offer the prayers at the patient's bedside was important. How I greeted them was a sign of respect. Islam helps us remember the importance of how we greet each other. A simple word or gesture can convey respect and help someone know that they are among friends. Our humanist presenter, All Souls' own Reverend Kendall Gibbons, focused on humanism's commitment to values and the need to operate without assumptions. A humanist is always searching, always on a journey. In other words, revelation is never sealed. Humanism is strongly committed to what people choose, and their choices demand the respect of others. This can be in relation to medical decisions, sexual orientation, gender identification, family structures, and relationships. Humanism reminds us to be open-minded and to operate without assumptions. It was clear that the humanist value of operating without assumptions was important when ministering with this Buddhist family. I admit that I felt embarrassed and humiliated by the assumption I made about the white American couple that accompanied the Buddhist family. I unconsciously assumed that because they were white and American, they were the helpers. The Buddhist family was living their value of kindness and compassion, of sharing what little they had with this homeless couple. As Unitarian Universalists, we are in the midst of thoughtful conversations about racism and white supremacy, and I learned that I have some serious work to do in this area. I humbly accept this task and am grateful to the humanist values of being open-minded and operating without assumptions, which was especially important as I cared for this family. The Jewish presenter, the Rabbi Jonathan Rudnick, focused on identity within Judaism. He said it's important to ask someone who is Jewish this question: what does it mean to you to be a Jew? Judaism is not just a religion. The Jewish people are made up of many tribes. Many Jewish people feel connected religiously, and many others do not believe in God and still strongly identify as Jewish. Judaism reminds us to dive beneath the surface to seek depth within our religious identity. In regard to the Buddhist family, we can then ask, what does it mean to be Buddhist? The textbook tenets of Buddhism include the following. Buddhism is non-theistic, is relatively free of dogma, and is based more on one's direct experience than upon religious doctrine. However, we know that no religious tradition is monolithic, and there are many ways to identify within a faith. The Buddhism that this family practiced was embedded in their culture and their traditions. While Buddhism focuses on teachings and not a deity, this family talked about God and prayed to God. Ritual was important, especially at the end of the patient's life. So Judaism reminds us that no matter what faith we practice, cultural context, tradition, and individual beliefs shape religious identity. The foundational values of the Amish faith were shared by a Mennonite minister, the Reverend Bob Carlson. As a presenter on the panel, he said that Amish values include some degree of separation from the world, reliance on community, and humility. For an Amish person, empathy and understanding are more important than spiritual guidance. Prayer outside of church is always in silence, and kindness is more important than words. The Amish faith reminds us of the importance of empathy, silence, and kindness in our relationships. These Amish values of empathy, kindness, and silence clearly help me connect with the Buddhist family. The differences in culture and language, especially with the patient's wife, taught me the importance of expressing empathy and kindness without words. I did not offer religious guidance. Rather, my ministry was often sitting together in silence or reaching out with a gentle touch or a hug. The Amish tradition reminds us that it's not always about what we say. Silence, empathy, and kindness are often the keys to connecting compassionately. Many pagans are reluctant to tell others that they practice paganism. Our presenter, Caroline Dawson, reminded us that paganism, unfortunately, is still often misunderstood. Many pagans, as Caroline said, are not out of the broom closet because a pagan's biological family may not accept their religion. This means that pagans often have two families. They have their biological families and their chosen families, which are usually comprised of people that practice the same faith. Paganism reminds us of the value of family, biological and chosen. The value of family, biological and chosen, was evident with this Buddhist family. I learned that there were people who were referred to as children of the patient and his wife that were not biological children. They were simply children who were taken into the family because they were in need somewhere along the way, and this family took them in. They were treated no differently than biological children. Several of these family members were halfway across the world, and they were updated frequently and included in any decision-making. The pagan tradition helps us remember that the love and closeness of family includes both biological and chosen family. These brief themes or insights I've distilled from the panelist presentation are offered to give us a few starting points to consider how to connect compassionately. They help us know that connecting compassionately with people who think or believe or practice differently than we do isn't super complicated. We don't have to be an expert about somebody's faith or culture to begin building a relationship. My work as a hospital chaplain is all about relationships and connections. To be honest, that's what keeps me coming back to hospital ministry every day. I have learned that when we are truly present and connect with someone, something amazing happens. Imagine in your mind's eye the Michelangelo painting referred to in the poem we opened with. There on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, God and Adam reach out to each other, fingers an inch apart. Imagine the energy in that space, the connection between human and divine. This image serves as a metaphor to help us understand that connection is sacred. And I believe, as does today's poet, that something sacred is created when we connect. This is where, as the poet says, God is at least a verb. Listen again. We're getting Michelangelo all wrong. God is not the bearded one surrounded by angels floating over the Sistine. He is not Adam with his muscled back pressed to the earth. No. God is the closing inch of space between their reaching fingers. God is waiting in the space between fingers that might connect. Each of us have that ability to reach out and connect. And when we do connect, we are like Michelangelo's image, inhabiting that vibrant, sacred space where human and divine meet. This place of connection is fertile with potential. Connecting compassionately is a space where we don't just experience the divine, we create the divine. To understand God as a verb means that when we connect compassionately, we actually create something larger and greater than ourselves. And in this place of creative expansion, the sacred is alive and active and growing and moving. This place of creating and joining with something larger than ourselves is the heart of connecting compassionately. The gift we receive from connecting compassionately is that we are then in that fertile place where there is the possibility for both giving and receiving blessing. Recall the opening reading where the Jewish surgeon connected with the Christian patient through his Star of David. The surgeon and patient moved beyond talking about the risks and benefits of surgery to that place of compassion and connection. They were talking about what really mattered. The patient benefited from this connection because she felt cared for. She felt confidence in this surgeon, both in his medical expertise, but because he was operating from a place of faith. And the surgeon most certainly benefited. He learned that his blessing could also be the patient's blessing. So let's return one more time to my story of ministry with the Buddhist family. And let's jump to the end of that story, to the moment when the daughter placed her hands on the gurney that held her father's body. I remember feeling a little bit shocked as she returned from the waiting room. Seeing the covered gurney that holds a loved one's body can be dehumanizing and thus traumatic. She understood that she couldn't go to the morgue or stay in the morgue with her father. I stood by and held that sacred space for her. I wanted to make sure she wasn't rushed by the transporters as she placed her hands on the gurney and whispered her message to her father. After a moment, she stepped back and with a nod let me know she was finished. She had offered reassurance to her father's soul, telling him why she couldn't stay with him. She blessed him by offering reassurance to his spirit. For just a moment, she followed him into the dark. I was feeling the weight of all this as I left the hospital at the end of the day. I ducked out a side door and started down the stairs, but something stopped me. The late afternoon sun was shining through a crabapple tree that arched over the stairs, and even though it wasn't windy, the leaves were fluttering and playfully dancing in the sunlight. I stopped under the tree and felt that weight I was carrying lift. My concern for this patient's long course of suffering lifted and joined those dancing leaves. In that moment, it became clear to me that the daughter's blessing had offered reassurance to her father's soul. I also believe her blessing set him free. In that moment of light dancing in the leaves, her blessing became my blessing. It's been a while, but this moment has stayed with me. Like that Jewish surgeon and the Christian patient, this patient's daughter and I do not share the same faith. Like the Christian patient, it wasn't about learning the particulars of this woman's faith. What was important was how she practiced her faith and how her faith influenced how she lived and loved. I don't believe that a spirit can get lost and needs help to follow one's body. I don't even know if I believe in a spirit, but that's not the point. What touched me deeply was that she followed her father into the dark, not to stay there, but to offer the reassurance to his spirit that set him free. Never underestimate the power of compassionate connection. There are many ways we can make that connection. Remember the importance of making and honoring time for spiritual practice, of how we greet each other, of operating without assumptions, of religious identity, of kindness and silence, and of family in all its forms. There are many places in our lives where we can apply these insights distilled from various faiths, whether in our places of work, in our schools or neighborhoods, in all the places where we do our work of justice, even here, in our places of worship. There is always the opportunity to connect compassionately. And when we make these connections, amazing things happen. In that place of connection, the sacred that we know as life, love, or God knows no bounds. In that place of creative expansion, God is at least a verb. When we connect compassionately, my blessing can be your blessing, and your blessing can be my blessing. When we connect with compassion, we bless each other and the world. May it be so. Amen. I invite you to stand in body or in spirit to join us in singing the hymn, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, and then please remain standing for the closing words.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, and recover every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our hearts stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
We leave blessed by our connections with one another. May you carry them with you as you depart from here. May you discover the places in the world where the blessings of compassion and connection are needed. May you have the courage to share them. And may there be an open place within you to receive the blessings of people whom you will meet along the way. Go in peace.